Case Study 3 People Analytics at Teach for America by Ethan Harrelson. Once again, like with the last two cases, I did this one by myself because my teammates were unresponsive, so this presentation and the paper are going to be done entirely by me. Start off with a little bit of background information. Teach for America was founded in 1989 by Wendy Kopp in New York City. It's a nonprofit organization with the mission statement is to enlist, develop, and mobilize as many as possible of our nation's most promising future leaders to grow and strengthen the movement for educational equity and excellence. So this is what Teach for America was created for in the late 80s, and they seemed to do very well off the beginning, growing up until about 2014-ish when their applications started decreasing, which is the issue we're going to be talking about. But they had in the tens of thousands of applications every year. Several thousand made it through and ended up getting hired and working with Teach for America. But they peaked in 2013 with 57,000 applicants and decreased about 10 to 15% for several years after that in a row. And because of the decreased applicants, they also have the decreased total employees, which obviously is not good for their brand because their goal is to have a large outreach to make a large impact. And so when they're decreasing the amount of total employees they have, obviously that's going to worsen their impact. And they did this because they're strict application requirements, and because of that, the decreased number of applicants, they didn't continue to accept the same amount. So they ended up decreasing the total numbers whenever they decreased the number of applicants. ACE identification. As I kind of mentioned in the background information, the decrease of applicants, it occurred for about 3 years straight before they started realizing it was a significant issue they needed to resolve. And it decreased, like I said, about 10 to 15, 16% each year for the several years in a row. And the reason this is so important is because, like I also said at the beginning, what their mission statement is, and they cannot effectively achieve that if they have less applicants, thus leading to less employees. They need a large outreach all the way across the country and all cities, as many as they can, with qualified people. And so when they have 30,000 applicants versus the 50,000 applicants, then that's just going to be less total people that they're taking through and going to end up becoming employees. And so their mission statement and their goal of the company is not getting achieved as much. And so this is obviously a big issue that needs to be resolved. 3 potential resolutions that I came up with. First one being to increase advertising for applications. A little bit anecdotal, but I remember when I was a kid, Teach for America seemed like a big thing. I remember hearing about them in school. I feel like on kids' channels that I saw things about Teach for America. And as I got older, probably late middle school, early high school, I kind of stopped hearing about them. And that was right along with their decreasing number of applicants. And so I'm wondering if maybe that was part of their reasoning. And so a solution to that would be increasing advertising for applicants. If they advertised that they are doing applications and what they're for, what the basic qualifications are on things like kids channels, on TV, potentially in schools, doing seminars in schools, things like that, they might be able to increase their number of applicants because they're getting more people to know about Teach for America. Because like I said, I kind of forgot they existed until this project. And so I feel like getting the name more exposure would probably be a big help. Second solution I came up with was to decrease their standards for applicants. If they want to just accept the fact that they're going to get less applicants each year, hopefully it'll plateau. That's usually what happens with things like this. They would eventually reach a point where it just kind of plateaus. So if they decrease the standards for people they accept, then they would have more employees. So they could go back up to the same number of employees they had with high applicants, but just doing it with less total applicants. And so they would have to decrease the standards. And the reason I thought this one might not be as bad is there obviously is some risk because they could end up accepting worse people and decrease the quality of work. But I don't think that would be something that would be very likely to happen, because if they're losing name recognition, they're losing total number of applicants every year, that means the people that are applying for it really have a passion for it and really want to do it. And so a lot of the standards that they may use to accept people, maybe a person's just bad at writing resumes, maybe they haven't had much work experience, maybe they're bad at interviews, but they might be great at what they would be doing with Teach for America. And so if they decrease some of the basic standards, they might end up having the same number of employees without actually decreasing the quality of work as much as they might think. And the third solution would be to give more responsibility to accepted applicants. So instead of let's just say, for example, Georgia's broken up into four districts. Let's just say there's a northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. And you're having to decrease the number of applicants, so you have to just split Georgia up into two. And so you have one person for north, one person in south. And so they're each handling about twice as much work. I don't think this would be necessarily bad either, because if someone has a passion for what they're doing and they also made it through their rigorous requirements, they probably are going to be able to accept a lot more responsibility than they're being given. So giving them the responsibility and the opportunity to do more and have a wider outreach on their own and take over some of the work that other employees not being hired would take care of, that might be a good solution. So moving on to the best solution, in my opinion, option one is the best, which was the increased marketing for applications. And I think this one is the best for several reasons. One being that there's less risk than the other two. Both come with risks, like I said, with the second option's risk being that they might have a decreased quality of product and service because they have less strict application requirements. Third one's risk being that if people do get overwhelmed, then they're going to also lead to a lower quality of service. So there's risk with both of those, and with option one, I don't think there's as much risk. The only risk would be maybe spending some marketing dollars that don't really amount to anything, but marketing has worked for companies since companies have existed. All they have to do is figure out what the proper marketing tactics need to be. Like I said, I think advertising specifically to their target market, kids and young, maybe high schoolers, things like that, that's not super hard to do. You go on things like YouTube and target towards kids. There's targeted ads everywhere. You can do social media. You can do TV shows. You can go into schools and do it. And I feel like that would be very effective. And it brings the company back to its roots, I feel like. Because with the other two, you're changing the kind of the business structure. Because with the second option, you're having to decrease standards, which means you're going to have to adapt to that if you're going to have lower quality workers. And for number three, you're going to have to change the business model because you're giving more people more responsibility and you're having less people total. So obviously that's going to constitute some kind of large change, so that way people can do that. And so doing this one just brings this company back to the truth. You're going to ideally increase the number of applicants, keep the same requirements, keep the same number of employees accepted, and I think it effectively solves the problem because, like I said, you're bringing the company back to its roots. It's going to be able to go back towards its initial mission statement of trying to get a generation of young leaders. And when you just increase the number of applicants, that would very simply solve their problem. And keeping everything else the same, that would be all they have to do for this one. And I think marketing would be a great way to do that. And like I said, marketing has worked for companies since the dawn of time, if you just figure out how to do it properly. To conclude, what we learned in this case is that a couple of different things. One, that it is very important to understand that companies have their ups and downs, whether it be in sales or otherwise. In this case, it was number of people applying, and that could be another thing. This one was that specific. Other companies, it could be turnover or what have you, like in the last case. But companies have their ups and downs, and I think what's important is that managing through those times is what sets your company apart from a great company to a good company. If you let the bad times get to you and you fire half your staff and you start closing doors whenever you have a rough time, you're not cut out for the industry. But if you persevere through them, figure out how to work around what's going on, then you're going to make it. And in this case, it was a very simple fix, in my opinion. You have decreased the number of applicants. All you have to do is increase the number of applicants again. It wasn't something that was super detrimental to the company. It was one thing they had to fix, and you could do that with simple marketing dollars, like I said. The central message is basically what I just said, is that every company is going to have off years. Every company is going to have their times where they increase and decrease. Pretty much every company, maybe with the exception of Chick-fil-A, has had increased and decreased revenue over a course of several years. And sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. And in this case, their ups and downs are with the applicants. And so I think figuring out how to navigate through these times is important. And the reason that it's important is, like I said, if you can't navigate through them, you're not going to make it. And so I think that that's really all there is to it. I mean, this was focused on people analytics, and I think that them having the analytics of what was going on is obviously very helpful. Some companies don't have the resources for that, but if you can, I think that's important because they were able to see where their applications were decreasing, potentially why, and then with those numbers you can figure out where you would want to effectively market. Like I said, that would be my solution, would be marketing. And so I think that if you figure out where you need to do that with the people analytics data that you have, you'll be all right. just to wrap up, just want to thank you for being a good teacher this semester. I know that through COVID and things like that, being online and in person, half and half, and then switching has been difficult for you as our professor and us as students. And I think that you've done better than most of my other professors. So just wanted to say thank you, and I hope you have a fantastic summer.